Welcome, everyone. This is the Buttercup Podcast where we talk about early childhood topics. My name is Marisa Macy, and I'm the host of the Buttercup Podcast. Today I have two guests. Uh, I'm super excited. I'm like starting to stumble over my words already, but I'm super excited to talk to both of you today. Today I have Heather Bernt-Santy, author of the book Using Schema Play Theory to Advocate for Free Play in Early Childhood. She's been living her commitment to children, their families, and their teachers for over 30 years. You may know Heather from her work as the host of the popular early care and education podcast, That Early Childhood Nerd. But she also loves her work as a speaker, consultant, writer, and professor. She has held just about every position possible in the field of early care and education. She's been a teacher, director, family child care provider, education director, you name it, she's probably tried it. Heather is an enthusiastic believer in children's right to play and of the research that tells us play is right. Thank you, Heather, for
Hi.
being here
Yeah.
today. And I also have with me today Amy Reyes Huff, and she's been serving in the early childhood space in Wyoming for many years and plays an important role in bridging gaps in early childhood education across the United States. She is an expert in early learning with specializations in social emotional learning, specifically digital tech wellness,
Mm.
outdoor learning, and early literacy. She has over 26 years of combined experience in child development and early childhood education with expertise in leadership, strategic planning, inclusion models, and transformational change. Amy spent her career as a Head Start director, also spending a good portion of her career as a kindergarten teacher. Amy holds degrees in elementary education with an endorsement in early childhood education, outdoor learning, education, child development, and organizational leadership with a minor in law. Amy currently works as the state of Wyoming's early learning and literacy specialist with the Wyoming Department of Education. Amy is an advocate for outdoor learning and emotional intelligence regarding digital tech addiction. She's integrated outdoor learning into over 200 classrooms across her home state of Wyoming with the Get Wild Wyoming initiative. Amy is an early childhood speaker and motivator who firmly believes children learn best in outdoor learning settings where they are able to self-regulate through natural colors, shapes, sounds, feelings, and most importantly, disconnected from devices. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Heather.
Ah,
So, my first question for you both, and maybe we'll start with Amy since A comes before H in the alphabet. I don't know a better way to do it. But how did you get started in the field of early education, Amy? And then we can pass it over to Heather when you're done.
I knew from a very, very young age that I wanted to be a teacher. I used to make worksheets for my sister. That poor thing had to sit there and do worksheets and sit in our make-believe classroom and everything else. I knew I was meant to be a teacher. And so, just from a very young age, that was the path I was set on. As soon as I was old enough to start college classes, I got my CDA endorsement and went into the world of early childhood. Started my career very early on at Head Start, started as a teacher in the Head Start program, and then was quickly promoted to Head Start director and have spent my entire career in early childhood education. I know this is exactly where I belong.
mm.
I
You
love
want me
that.
just to go?
Yeah, I love that. And the last sentence, I know this is exactly where I belong. That's so
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy. Heather, how'd you get started?
Yes. Well, I went to college at 17 to major in English and French, and then at 19 needed a job, and somebody in my family said this child care center is hiring, and I knew that I had a talent for working with children from various contexts. Like a lot of us, babysitting through high school and working at like summer camps and things like that. And so I got the job in a childcare center before I even knew that early childhood education was something like you could study or that child development was something like you could go learn about. So I was one of those people who um, was able to, start the work without having studied it formally, I guess. Our regulations are kind of uneven and a lot of us get in before we realize that it's something to study. And I did the work for almost 20 years before had an opportunity to go back to college and get the formal degrees. But I got a CDA in my 20s. And like accidentally found a book in a elementary school teacher store a couple years into working in childcare called More Things to Do with Toddlers and Twos by Karen Miller. Long time ago, yeah. I wish I knew where Karen Miller was now. I just really owe a lot to her. But and that was where I was like, oh wait, what? Cognitive development? Social development? What? And that's when I realized it was something that you could learn about. And so I had to do a lot of that independently until I was able to go get the degrees. And it felt right, and it felt from the beginning that this is what I should be doing. Yeah.
That is awesome. Thank you. And you talked about going into the bookstore and finding Miller's book on
Mhm.
toddlers. And you just got done writing a book, and you and I were just in Florida for the NACE
Yeah.
conference, and you had a session, but you also had a book signing. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your book on play?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah. So it's got the title rolls off the tongue, but it's called Using Schema Play Theory to Advocate for Free Play in Early Childhood. It's a little bit of a clunky title, but the whole idea is um, uh, that play is disappearing from children's lives, and if we want to change people's minds about play, then we have to understand what it is that they think isn't enough about play, if that makes sense. Um, so the book uses stories of children engaging in something called schema play, um, and tells the story and then breaks it down into, if the person you're trying to persuade is going to be persuaded by literacy, then here's the stuff you can share that is happening in that play story that supports literacy. Or if the person you're trying to persuade values math, then here's the stuff that might be happening in that play story that supports their math development. In the hope that we will just start using stories of play to spread the word and to be curious when we watch children play. What depth is there here? What's the complexity? Sure, it's cute and it's fun, and children just deserve that joy, but also there's deep stuff happening when they're playing.
I love that. And what you said, children deserve that joy. One of the things I was wanting to talk with you guys about are children's rights to play. And Amy was a guest on your podcast, Heather, and
Mhm.
you guys were talking about circle time. And one
Yeah.
of the things I loved about the conversation you both had was play, both small group and also large group, and the benefits of different types of play. But do you want to talk a little bit, Amy? You want to start by talking about um, children's right to play and the context for play?
Absolutely. And as many of you know, it's not a favorable opinion on circle time. And so a lot of times I get a lot of backlash about
Mhm.
my non favorable opinions on circle time. And, when I think about it, I think play, it's not merely just this recreational break. It's this primary vehicle for learning and brain development in early childhood. So it provides this natural laboratory for children to explore these complex concepts through trial and error over and over, which research shows results in better retention and mastery through these traditional methods. And I'm like, so why would we try to harness in all of that during
Mhm.
something like circle time where we're having them sit there and they're like crisscross applesauce, put a bubble in your mouth, and especially in a time when behavior's on the rise and oral language is on the decline at the same time, then we're trying to harness all of those things. It just doesn't add up for me.
And that's why I wanted to have that conversation on our show. Like you had posted about that. I think I saw it on LinkedIn, Amy. And because it's such a familiar script, circle time, and play seems like frivolous or extra. And we have to really examine why is one seen as more important than the other when we have research, decades of research that says play is really the way children are wired to learn and grow. But we have this script of looking like school, and it's hard to move through that.
Yes.
Well, the most effective way to build those executive functions, like working memory,
Mhm.
self-regulation, cognitive flexibility, all these crucial skills for lifelong success built right there in play that's naturally happening.
Mhm.
Yes, and one of the things that you both were talking about was um, indoor play and outdoor play. And you had some great ideas, Amy, that you were talking about for outdoor play. And it reminded me a little bit of like universal design for learning. And like one of the strategies you said was, well, maybe if the children like their carpet squares, take the carpet squares outside. And I love those like tips that you
Yeah.
gave and different ways to think about play in a variety of environments and settings. Do you want
Mhm.
to respond to that?
I completely, I still stand very firmly on that. And even if, you're doing a small group setting and you have children that aren't wanting to sit during that particular setting, I don't understand the strong emphasis on having everybody sit together. If you have somebody who wants to stand in the back and jump on one foot and turn around the entire time, that learning is still happening
Mhm.
because their body's moving, which means their brain is currently engaged even better.
Mhm.
So I guess I don't understand the process of sitting there crisscross applesauce, eyes on 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. When if you have somebody who's jumping up and down on the in the back of the room, research has proven over and over that boys especially they have to be moving for their brains to be engaged. So
Mhm.
let's let them jump up and down in the back of the room, and they'll be more engaged in the end anyway.
Yes. Heather, you look like you have something you wanted to say.
It's so hard to be on the other side of the mic, right? And not be and waiting my turn. It's so hard. I mean, I think I just wrote an article called um If They Just Play, Am I a Real Teacher? It was published in a special issue of Exchange magazine. Because I get that question a lot, and I think that's why it's so easy to cling to being still and those teachery shorthand phrases like crisscross applesauce, because that feels teachery. It fits a familiar script. Um, and when you're brand new, it's easier to do that than to have, you have all the skills to um, sort of trust that that's all still, even if they're jumping up in the back of the room, they're still paying attention. And when we add the pressure of people looking, and if it doesn't look like school, they don't think that it's real learning or that it's valuable for children. That I call it teacher ego, but I don't mean that as like an insult or a criticism. I think it is just we all are really wondering, how do I prove that I'm worth the work I do is worth your respect? And it's so far most of our efforts go to well, I just have to make it look as much like school as I can instead of well, here's why I let him jump up and down. And that's my professional judgment. And that's how I'm a professional. And that's why you should respect the work I do. But I just always want to acknowledge that I know the pressure is there.
Well,
Yeah.
and if you go into any ECE classroom across the US, that's what you're going to see is that
Mhm.
traditional circle time rug and everything surrounding it. And so it is the confines of that and that pressure, that societal pressure to do your circle time and those
Mhm.
calendar activities and those everything that goes into circle time and not break that and go,
Yeah.
is that really what's developmentally appropriate right now? And sort of push back and go, all right, but if we're going moving into this play-based instruction instead, I think that's why this is so important. These conversations that we're having are so important
Mhm.
to start to change that narrative a little bit, especially with the pressures that the ECE providers are currently up against.
Yes, thank you. And students in my curriculum class are going to be watching this or listening to the podcast. And I was wondering if you had any advice for supporting play in the curriculum. Any tips or ideas for how we can do that?
You go first, Heather.
Um, I was just like, ooh, I'm teaching a curriculum class in the spring
Yep,
too.
I knew that.
I love it.
I mean, I think knowing what specific goals you have and then thinking, um, how can I how can I meet that goal in a way that allows them to be children still? And so, they need to move, and it needs to be meaningful to them for them to really engage with it. And there's no way to know what's meaningful to a child unless you watch them play. I mean, honestly, that's you've got to spend a lot of time observing them and the choices they make and the ways that they play and noticing deeply how they use materials and who do they talk to, and that's what's going to give us good data for any kind of goal setting or activity planning. Um, but I tell a story? I don't know how much time we have, but I
I love stories, and I
Okay, all
think
right. So I was working in a preschool 5 or 6 years ago, and we did small groups. We'd read a story, and then we had three small groups that they could choose to move between or not engage in. But they were connected to the story we read, and we knew that we had kids who were into dinosaurs, and we knew that one of the goals was matching, sorting and matching. And so I thought, well, I'll just do this dinosaur domino game and have that out for one of the small groups. And all those kids who are into dinosaurs will come join me. And they didn't. Like one kid came and, it was you supposed to match this dinosaur on this domino to the dinosaur that looks just like it on the other domino. And so I did a little brainstorming, and the next day when we tried it again, I added Velcro to the dominoes, and we had a wall that had like a Velcro sticky, fabric on it. And I put one domino up on the wall, up high enough that they'd have to kind of reach to get it, and all the rest of the dominoes on the floor. And so just that act of moving it away from the table and into a space where they could really move, and they were bending down and then reaching up and bending down and reaching up, and they were so much more engaged because it seemed more like they had some control over what they could do with their bodies, and they were into dinosaurs, but they didn't want to sit at a table with dinosaurs. So sometimes we just have to think outside the box, and just it can be something as simple as what opportunities in this activity do they have to move? And when can they make decisions about what they do here? And that adds an element of playfulness, even when it's something you feel like you have to lead and direct. Um, and that's the kind of thing that's sort of trial and error, right? You try it. If it doesn't work, you try a different way. And if it doesn't work, it's all data for you. Um, but it starts with putting the child at the center of it and not me at the center of it.
Well, and I think what I would add to that, as you were talking about that, it reminded me of the significance of open-ended materials and not backing yourself into that corner. So
Yeah.
providing those loose parts like building blocks and natural objects, so materials that they don't have a single correct use, like encouraging higher level creative thinking and problem solving, and
Mhm.
by really just not just really embracing those open-ended materials, and then designing that play rich environment that went with it. So
Mhm.
arranging the environment so that it matched with what you were currently already doing, but inviting those zones and breaking it up as that, this really warm feeling, but also whatever the children are wanting to do during that time, right?
Mhm.
And so we're really just leaving it open ended for whatever they are wanting to do. And so I really appreciate you bringing up the loose parts portion of it.
Loose parts are the best.
Mm-hmm.
yes, those are such great ideas. So the use of different materials, using observation and what you're learning about the children and their preferences and what they like, and the role of the adult in creating a playful environment, I
Mhm.
think is also kind of underlying what you're saying about having a foundation for play. I'm getting ready to go visit my parents. They live out of town, and my daughter and my dad love to play. I mean, he is like such a playful person to begin with, and I was telling him, I called him one time last week when my daughter was taking ice skating lessons. And I said, Dad, you won't believe what she can do now on ice skates. They're playing green light, red light right now in the class, and she can stop on ice. It's amazing. And he said, red light, green light. She and I have never played that. We've got to make sure we play that when she comes to visit. And I was just like, I just love my dad so much. And I love how he's always thinking about hide and seek, what games
Mhm.
they're going to play, all the fun things they're going to do when they get together. And I just think, it really does start with noticing and what you're saying about observation and what do we have available to us, and maybe it's materials we need or equipment or just an idea, and then that sparks the fun that
Uh-huh.
that can happen, but it's intentional and it's learning, and
Mhm.
that's what we need. So one of the things I wanted to ask you guys, one of the things that came up on the episode you did was uh, you talked a lot about respecting children, and I heard more than one time on in your episode about respecting children and respecting their time. And I just loved the way you guys were talking about
Mhm.
respect for children. Do you want to piggyback off of that? And respect and honor, because I think we do that with the families and the parents, but thinking about children as their own person and respecting each child, I think is so powerful.
Mhm.
I think respect just starts with an unhurried space for reflection that honors the process of learning rather than just the outcome. And that's why that is so important.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we do in whatever setting children are with us for a group, group care kind of situation, so much of what we do is not seeing them as individual human beings, right? And not because we're horrible, not because we wake up in the morning rubbing our hands thinking, I can't wait to dehumanize a child today. But when we expect everybody to do the same thing in a group, and my goal is just to move everybody smoothly through the day, and I'm making most of the decisions, it's just too easy to only think about the group and not think about that individual human being, those 20 individual human beings that you've got with you. And so moving away from that into more child-chosen play sort of immediately breaks that spell, and we're forced to look at individual children and note other than behavior. Like we're really good at looking at individual children when their behavior challenges us. But when we allow them more choice and play and agency, and we start to see um, the individuals again, then I think that feeds more of creates an environment where we are able to intentionally show respect to children by the things we put in the space, by the way we respond to what they're doing, by the time that we give them, and the pieces where we can give them some control over what is happening in their day. Um, and I just think that's a better way for the teachers too, to go through like so much so much would change of the things that kind of stress us out when we loosen up and give children a little bit more agency, control, respect, whatever that is. When we don't feel like we have to control everything, it's less stressful for us too.
And these magical things like executive functioning and oral language happen, and they just naturally flourish when
Mhm.
you start to respect the child and give them the
Mhm.
space and the time that they deserve. Then those things just organically they just start to come together, and it's magical and
Yeah.
beautiful all at the same time.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
easier for us to notice because we're a little more relaxed.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, there's benefits for the adult also.
Yeah.
uh, I I was recently asked to talk about leadership at my university. We have a faculty senate speaker series, and every year, every academic year, they ask two people, or two people are awarded um, uh, the the award. And I don't know how to say it. And so I just got done doing that talk last week. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about was seven leadership principles that I've learned from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Mm.
And so one of the leadership principles that I talked about and showed some research on was one of the things that I took away from watching his show and from Fred Rogers over the years is how he honored others, his respect for other people,
Mhm.
children, adults, birth to adulthood. He respected his mother on the show by wearing her hand knit sweaters. He respected the people on his team. And
Mhm.
just this honor and respect that he showed in his gentle ways of leadership and radical kindness. And I was wondering if there was any leadership principles that you took away from Fred Rogers, and because I know both of you have done work with leadership and
Mhm.
studied it, and uh, did you want to comment on that?
I would just say that he defined, let me make sure I have this correctly, but he defined intentional listening as a primary way to say I love you to a
Mhm.
child. And so that's what always sticks with me is I'm paying attention to you, I'm listening to you, and by doing that, I'm showing you that I love you. And by not rushing you through these lessons, that honors you as a child, that respects you in this natural way and through these natural paces of and processing and learning, that is showing that I love you and I care about you and I value you. And so
Mhm.
that's the biggest lesson and the biggest takeaway I found.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just his kindness. It's so easy to lose sight of how important and how meaningful it can be just to like be very aware of your tone or your body position or your body language, whether you're working with adults or children. And if you're doing work that's already sort of stressful, which working with children can be, um, just that he was almost a co-regulator before we talked about co-regulation, and kindness and uh, talk. You know, he talked directly to the camera, like he was talking directly to us, and especially if we're working thinking about leadership in terms of being a leader in a group of young children. Even I'm way up here and they're way down here, and even the kindest things are coming down, a hierarchy. And so getting down and remembering how that felt when Mr. Rogers looked right at you and not down on you, I think sticks with me. And I think about that like weirdly often.
Yes, yes, I love both of those insights into his leadership and ways that we can take that when
Mhm.
we're working with children. And uh, one of the things that I really appreciated about his leadership was his transparency with the viewers. And
Mm.
one of the things that he would do is he would have part of the show in reality, and then he would go over to the make believe. And
Yeah.
he did his own, he was such a talented composer of his own songs and puppetry, and he was also a ventriloquist. And one of the things that he did was he voiced his own puppets. Well, he also would take that back to the reality, and he'd say, uh, basically, you heard the puppet over there in make believe,
Mhm.
and that was me.
Uh,
That was my voice, and he'd show with the puppet and his voice, so kids wouldn't be scared, and they would know, oh, I'm safe. He made you feel safe because he explained things and he was clear, and you didn't have to wonder, oh, where's that voice coming from? It kind of sounds like Mr. Rogers, but is it somewhere else, someone else? And I just thought, the role of a leader is also to be transparent and communicate what's important and what the people that, you're supporting need to hear. And that can go with children, it can go with families, it can go with parents, it could go with other people on the team when you're part of a workforce, is this idea that, psychological safety. We want everyone
Mhm.
to feel safe.
Yeah, I think as I'm listening to that too, to me that's perspective taking. Like he could take the perspective of the child, and that's why he was so good at thinking, "Oh, that might be scary. I need to be transparent about that." And I think you can hook that into any leadership context too, that ability to think about the perspective of the people that you're leading, and think about, okay, then what do I need to adjust about myself?
I can hear, like in Mr. Rogers' voice right now, hearing, I like you just the way you are. Like
Yeah.
that just fosters this environment of like differences are celebrated rather than just
Um,
merely tolerated, right? Like
mhm,
I'm just I'm just hearing that in my head right now. And it's just making me happy and joyful and accepted, and I love that.
mhm.
Yes, yes. Well, my students watched or listened to this podcast, and where the idea came for me to talk about that at our faculty senate was from them because uh, the college students made these little stickers to pass out in our student union for people's water bottles and laptops. And what it was is it was a picture of Mr. Rogers with Daniel Tiger, the puppet, in one hand. And then in the background, it was music, the lyrics to one of his songs.
Mm,
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
mhm.
And and then right below the picture of Mr. Rogers and Daniel Tiger was WWMRD. And I had never seen that before. And so I didn't know what that meant. And so the student said, it's a question. It
Um,
means, what would Mr. Rogers do?
yeah.
And I just thought, he died in 2003. And these students probably didn't grow up watching Mr. Rogers'
Mhm.
Neighborhood, like,
Yeah.
a lot of generations. And so his legacy endures of kindness, of uh, being good to people. He has a quote about making goodness attractive,
Mm.
and just the whole idea of honoring others and respecting all people. And I loved those things that you guys added. Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you, Heather, because it's in your book, could you
Oh.
talk a little bit about schema play theory?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want to do that earlier because I didn't want to turn the whole show into that. But schema play theory, in a nutshell, refers to the work of a woman named Chris Athey in the 70s in England. And it's uh, builds on Jean Piaget's ideas about schemes and schema in children's in all of our knowledge building. But she did a research study over I think 5 years of children 2 to 6 years old, and her goal was to watch them play, and her team watch them play and see what they could learn about how children think so that they could use that information to plan curriculum better for this age. And what she found was that there were repeated patterns in children's play that she was seeing over and over across multiple, across many children over that whole time of the research project. It was called the Froebel Early Learning Project. And she identified like over 40 of them. And we sort of talk about them in terms of 8 or 10 schema now, but it's repeated patterns like transporting and trajectory and rotation and circularity and transforming things and orientation and perspective. I'm not going to be, I'm lost track of where I am, so I'm not going to be able to list all 8 of them in just off the top of my head right now. But So like in transporting, children are doing just that. They carry things around with them. They load purses up and carry purses around, or they have things in their pocket, or they are using trucks to carry things around, or buckets and baskets. And sometimes they get dumped out of the buckets and baskets as part of that transporting schema, or transforming just whenever they can change the physical properties of things, or when they're pretending. That's sort of a transforming experiment for them. And that's what it is. They're doing these repeated patterns as they freely explore their space. And each time they repeat it or do that same action with another material, they learn more about the world. They get more essentially data. Um, but they're, and it's driven by their interest and their internal questions about the world. So it's really interesting in like Canada and England and Australia and New Zealand. These schemas have been kind of a cornerstone for their child development studies for decades since then. And in the United States, not so much. When I first started researching it, almost every source I found was from one of those other countries. And but it's something that when I talk to parents, students, teachers, I get more aha kind of reactions. They're like, oh, that's why they do that weird thing. I thought it was just a weird thing. And now I have a different way to think about it. It's part of their play and their exploration and their learning.
Well, and understanding schemas, it really helps the educators understand these disruptive
Yeah.
actions, like throwing things, or like a lot of teachers aren't into kids mixing up the Play-Dohs
Yeah.
together. This is an essential cognitive work and action that can be seen as misbehavior, but it's
Mhm.
these schemas that are happening, and it's
Mhm.
this transformative work that's not, although seen disruptive, it's
Mhm.
not. It's brain work in action.
Yep. Yeah, that's one of the things I love most is it gives us, I always tell people, you don't have to know the right answer right away when a child has done something you don't want them to do again. But you do need to pause and wonder and, and it gives us the trajectory schema, for example. Sometimes it's them experimenting with how things move through space. Sometimes that's their body. So a child's climbing or jumping or spinning, and we might see that as disruptive behavior when really it's it's knowledge seeking, it's data collection, in addition to being fun. And it
Yes.
can really help us reframe and sort of calm ourselves before we decide how to respond.
Yes, I loved that. I wrote that down, Amy. Brain work and action.
Yeah,
And
that's
when
perfect.
you, yeah, and when you were talking, Heather, about different types of play, and it reminded me of my daughter when she was about 18 months to about 24 months. There was this period where I called it pileology because she would make a big pile of something,
Hmm.
like all her toys. She'd put all her toys in one area, and then she would take them and make a new pile in
Yeah,
a new spot.
yeah,
And it was just the cutest thing to watch. And I just would be mesmerized by
right.
that play of,
Yeah,
then she would like step back and look like, whoa, I did that.
yeah.
And when you
It's
think about um, how much development is happening to do that, because there's
yeah,
gross motor, there's cognitive, there's fine motor.
yeah,
I mean, there's so many different things that come into play when a
yeah,
child is engaged in an activity like that.
yeah. And it helps us remember that children, birth to five especially, are about the process. I'm 55 now. I've kind of grown out of that. I'm looking at products most of the time, right? Like, so if I look at a child doing something like that, it doesn't make sense to me because there's no product. It's all just weird process. But that's where children live. They live in the moment, in the process, just with what I can't even begin to guess what they might be thinking, but I can kind of watch and see what they're trying and how they change it, or do they add new things, or do they take it to another spot? And that gives me, Chris Athey called that their threads of thinking. It helps us access that. But it's just good to remember that they're in their process era.
Yes, they're in their process era. Yeah. Did you want to say anything about that, Amy?
I was sitting here just reflecting on Amy Reyes as a teacher from 25 years ago and how the
Yeah.
kids would like they would build up the blocks and then they would intentionally knock them down, right?
Mhm.
And Amy Reyes 25 years ago, before she knew anything about schemas or
Yeah.
anything like that, right? If only we knew now what we, all this
Yep.
stuff. But I was thinking, oh my gosh, there was a whole purpose behind the stacking of the blocks and knocking them down and how loud it was. And at the time I was like, oh, it's so disruptive and so loud in my classroom. But now I'm like, that is brain work in action. Good job, guys, but you don't
Yeah.
know what you don't know. And so I was
Yeah.
just reflecting on that just now.
I tell my students all the time, none of us are born knowing this. None of us are
No.
born knowing how to do this. We've all done the things that we're saying we don't do any,
Yes.
we've all come through this process and it comes down to curiosity, I think. Like,
Yep.
instead of saying, "Gah, I'm so annoyed that they did that," maybe shifting to, I wonder why they did that, or I wonder why that appeals to them.
That's
Yeah.
what's so refreshing about professors like the both of you that are doing this work and teaching this next generation and making sure that they understand that there's a processes that's going into it because I no, I don't remember anybody teaching me that hey,
No.
this is going to happen and the cars are going to go down the ramp and they're going to sling them into the wall a whole bunch of times and there's a processes that's going into that. And so we have professors that are really leading the charge in this work, so I commend you both.
Thank you, Amy. And I commend you, Amy, and you, Heather. And I have a question about your outlook on play. What
Oh,
quote or motto or bumper sticker or idea that best captures your thoughts on play?
yeah. Well,
Mm.
I have a magnet on my car, a magnet sticker on my car that says, "Get in, loser. We're embracing a childlike sense of wonder."
I love that.
And that's kind of that's if I have to choose a motto, that's what it would be.
Hey, I wonder if they sell that at Nacy. I would
Nope, I
definitely
didn't
buy
see it at
that.
Nacy.
Where did you get that bumper sticker?
Tender Ghost. The company's called Tender Ghost.
Tender Ghost. Well, I'm on it.
Well, and I'm a sucker for Montessori, so I always go back to play as the work of the child.
Yeah. Yep, so
And
good.
I will forever be grateful for my time with Montessori. And I believe that that's where I gained that knowledge of that hands-on work
Mhm.
and how important that is. So I'm just gonna go just nerd out with Maria Montessori and just say play is the work of the child because although it's sometimes not seen as work, it is the work of the child.
Mhm.
I love that. Well, I kind of shared this already, but my play inspiration is my dad. I learned from a really early age how important play is, and they've actually done studies on cortisol levels that
Mhm.
when parents and familiar caregivers play with children, that actually reduces stress.
Yep.
And there's so many benefits, not
Yeah.
only to the child but also to us. So my dad's my play inspiration.
Right.
Who is your play inspiration, Heather and Amy? Do you have one? Someone who inspires you in this work you do?
I would just say the entire International Play Association and that entire group of talented individuals that are out there doing the work every day, not just speaking about it, preaching about it, but actually living it and doing the boots on the
Mhm.
ground work every single day. So big shout out to the International Play Association.
Yeah. Yeah,
Very
they're
cool.
amazing. Amy and I were just at their conference in Louisville in October, the United States chapter of that group. So, I mean, I go back to my grandmother. I used to spend summers on her farm, and it was utilitarian. I mean, she was a playful person, but she had stuff she needed to get done. So she would make sure that there was. Um, Materials and permission and space for how I wanted to play. So sometimes that was paper dolls or making things out of egg cartons. But I had a whole kitchen in the front yard of her like cast off pots and pans and empty plastic containers with water and food coloring in it. So I could pretend I was really cooking and I would get the cucumbers that were too small for pickling and she'd let me have a little dill so I could pretend to do all of that and she made it just uh, I always go back to that that memory those memories of not only being free to play, but knowing even as a young child that I was like sort of supported and celebrated as I played. And that's something I try to carry forward and through my work.
Oh, I love that. And your grandmother respected your right to play, it
Mhm.
sounds like, and that
Mhm.
honor and respect that she gave you. And I love how you worded that. She celebrated you. You were the important part of her life, and that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, my last question for both of you is, what's been the highlight of your career that you want to share with us? Has there been a highlight that, well, I don't know. It might have been pretty cool to have your book signing,
Yeah,
Heather,
I was gonna say.
at Macy's.
I can't, it'll sound like shameless self-promotion, but I mean, I've known since I was 11 and read Little Women and fell in love with Jo March that I wanted to write a book. And now at just a couple months over 55, I had my book come out. So it was a long road, but
Congratulations.
definitely that's my
Yay.
highlight. Yeah, and being, at NACY in the expo hall and the vendor hall, doing what I had seen so many people I respect do before me, interact with people and sign books and all that. That was definitely a highlight.
I am going to say just the full circle of a few weeks ago, I presented at the Head Start Association conference and starting my career 26 years ago as
Wow.
a teacher for Head Start, and then now coming back 26 years later and presenting at the Head Start Association conference was, I mean, that was huge. And maybe it's probably not the largest conference that I've presented at, but it was just the full circle coming around that it was very real and very heartwarming and just meant so much to me in my career. So right now I'm still living on that high. So I'm going to go with that one.
Oh,
That's
I love
amazing.
that. Thank you. Head Start and book signing. And one of the things that I share with my students a lot is, this is really a hard profession. It's re extremely rewarding, but there are going to be times where you're going to go home and you're going to go to bed at 5 o'clock at night because you are that exhausted. It's hard work.
Yes.
And so keep track of your smile, the things that make you smile, these wonderful memories that you have, because some days you need to draw on those
Mhm.
your smile file. And I keep a recipe box, and I have little note cards, and I when there's something I want to remember, if I've had a hard time, I'll like take out one of the recipe cards. And I just think it's wonderful to hear both of you talk about your highlights and just you know uh, uh, the joy we get from this profession. And I could tell from both of you, you've been in this profession a lot of years, and you put in a lot of hard work, a lot of sweat, and your experiences have made you a stronger educator. And one of my highlights is getting to talk to you and learn how
Oh,
you did it, and see just how much joy our work can give us. So thank
mhm.
you for sharing your joy with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, how can listeners follow you?
Well, they can search that early childhood nerd just about anywhere, and it'll take them to a variety of places. So that's the name of the podcast, and it's on iTunes and Spotify and Libsyn and all those places. But also my website is just thatearlychildhoodnerd.com, and on various social medias, I'm that early childhood nerd.
And you can find me on LinkedIn, Amy Reyes Hoff. And you can also find me if you just do a general Google search under Get Wild Wyoming. You'll find it all over the internet.
Mhm.
Or if you get really bored, you can look up hashtag scrap circle time and you'll find all the heat that I've taken over the years. And you'll find it very, very entertaining.
Well,
Your
thank you.
LinkedIn stuff is good. It's so much
Yes,
better than a lot of LinkedIn stuff.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Thank you.
I love both of the things you both share. Thank you so much. And thank you for inspiring me. I want to be more like you guys.
Oh,
Thank you, both of you. Thank you, Heather Bernt-Santy. Thank you, Emmy. Thank you, Amy Rayshoff, and to be continued.
Thank you, Marissa.
thank you. Take care.